Hi, friend. Niclas here. Welcome to another episode of the Your Audio Solutions podcast, where it's my mission to find the tools and methods from the people that inspire you so you can apply their knowledge to your own life and work. And on the show today, we have video game music composer Jack Wall, and he has done music for games such as Call of Duty, Black Ops, 2, 3, 4, and the latest one, Cold War, which looks badass. It's also music for Mass Effect, and Myst, and many other cool games. And it was such a pleasure having Jack on the show. Really inspiring guy, and I hope you're gonna love this interview as well. And it was really cool learning more about how it is working for a game or on a game such as Call of Duty, and it's also he shared a really inspiring story about how he essentially gave up his job as a civil engineer and just thought there's something else for him out there in the world. And obviously there was. He's now doing kick-ass music for kick-ass games. So I think you're going to really love this interview with Jack Wall. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you think about the interview, and yeah, just share any thoughts you have on video games and working on video games, composing music, whatever. But before we get into the interview with Jack, I'd love for you to check out the Audio Tribe. There's a link to it in the description below. Just enter your name and email address, and you have joined the Audio Tribe email list. And so what do you get by joining this email list? Well, you get exclusive access to interviews before the public. You also get a chance to ask up-and-coming guests questions and some other cool stuff I love to do in the future of this channel. Some cool stuff I have in mind. So if you want to join this for free, just enter your name and email address, and you have joined the Audio Tribe email list. Also, feel free to subscribe to the channel, either if that's Apple Podcast, Spotify, or here on YouTube. The channel is growing slowly but steadily, and it's all thanks to you. So I really appreciate your support. It means we can do more cool stuff, get more and more cool guests on, and all that sort of good stuff. So feel free to subscribe. Really appreciate your support. But yeah, let's get into the interview with video game music composer Jack Wall. So please enjoy. But yeah, I mean, thank you first of all, for taking your time. Really appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. So what's the deal in Portugal now? Can you, I guess the same like here in the UK, right? Like you can, is there a strict lockdown maybe?
Well, I don't know. I came from Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles. We were in the UK for about 3 weeks. Our daughter's going to school there, and now we're here in Portugal. So the US is a total shit show. It's like nobody cares about anything and everyone's dying. Right. The UK is better, but they're still not really taking it that seriously. Some people are, but some people aren't, right? Mm-hmm. And then here, everyone takes it seriously. So everyone's wearing a mask when you go outside. And they're locking down, like today is locked down because it's a holiday. So everyone's supposed to go home at 1 o'clock. So thank you for moving this, because then we had the morning to go do some stuff this morning. And then and the weekends are all locked down at 1 o'clock as well. And then during the week, curfew is at 10 p.m. So that's what's going on here. And they're like, they were really bad for a while, and now they're doing pretty well. Yeah.
Right. So you're staying put in Portugal till the new year, or are you going back Los Angeles?
Yeah, we're going to be here. We're going to go back to Los Angeles on the 21st through London. So yeah. So we're planning on riding out the post-election nightmare of the United States.
right. That's good. I mean, it's been crazy with the corona, man. I mean, you're living here in London. It's been the problem here in the UK, at least, maybe same in US, is that it's become politicized. That it's become politicized. That's the main problem.
Completely ridiculous. Yeah. Completely ridiculous. And then and then everyone has their sort of own point of view. Like there was this video going around, like somewhere in our hometown, Sherman Oaks, California, there's a bar and restaurant that is right down the street from where we live called the Pineapple Saloon. And the woman who owns this was doing a video, and she was just outraged that she was being shut down because she put a tent outside, and she had tables that were at least 7 feet apart, and she did all the things she was supposed to do, and she went to all this expense to make it look good, and then she's getting shut down. And like right next door are a ton of like tents set up by a movie company, and they're not shut down.
Oh yeah, I saw
and
that
she
actually.
was so bad.
Yeah,
you saw that?
I saw the headline. I didn't see the video, but I saw the headline.
Yeah, that's right down the street from our house.
Wow.
And she was so animated about it. She was so angry. But you know, it's sort of like, I don't know. I mean, how do you manage this on sort of like a massive scale? Like, you know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, today
you have to think that people don't like, you know, and that's what's going to happen.
Exactly. But today was the first person ever in the UK, maybe the world. I might be wrong there, but ever in the UK at least to get vaccinated for the.
It was
virus.
today, right?
Yeah, a 90-year-old.
So cool.
Woman or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are leading the way. And the next guy his name was William Shakespeare.
Yeah, exactly. Hilarious. Exactly. It's funny.
And it was called Taming of the Flu. Cracked me up.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny, man. But yeah, I just hope
she was patient 1A, and he was patient to be or not to be.
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Up here. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we're gonna get rid of it soon. I mean, I heard some people say it's not gonna be until 2022 or end of 21, maybe.
It'll take a while.
But has it affected your work at all? Or
what's that? No, not really. I mean, it has affected it, but you know, it was actually more work. But we could talk about that in the interview.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you want to start, and we'll.
I started recording from the beginning, and if you want anything, it's a casual. I like to ease into it casually.
I like casual. That's fine. That's cool.
Yeah. Sometimes
I just did one with Austin Wintory for Dice. That was really fun. We just chatted for like an hour.
Yeah,
fun. Hour and a half.
Wow. Because I've been trying to do like a formal introduction, and there's a clear difference in saying to the interviewee like, now we're starting, rather than like we do now. You know, it becomes better if we just start without saying anything.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So that's what we're doing
here. Dress it up however you like.
Exactly.
Here's the idiot from Los Angeles, Jack Wall. You just put that in at the beginning later.
That's all right, man. But yeah, so your work's been as busy as usual or more busy?
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, I was already working on Cold War. I was working on that when the pandemic started, right? I just started working on it in February. And then we got locked down in mid-March. We didn't go anywhere. And, you know, so from the standpoint of like affecting my work, you know, anybody who's doing animation or video games is fine because you can still work and stuff like that. But so, you know, it's just another day at the office for me. I was locked down. Just my studio is in my garage, so
right.
15-foot commute into my garage, so I was good. Didn't affect that, but you know, when it came to recording with orchestra and choir and stuff like that, that was a bit of a consideration and a worry for most of the production. Will we have an orchestra? And we had contingency plans. Like if we can't do an orchestra, I'm just gonna spend more time in the mix, you know, and try to make the samples sound better. And that would have been fine as well. We would have made that work, and maybe I could have overlaid some, you know, solo musicians just to give more live feel or whatever. So we were probably going to do that if we couldn't record the orchestra. But it turned out that in Tennessee they weren't really locked down, so we recorded in Nashville for the orchestra, and we did the strings, all in one pass. They were just separated a little more in the room, wearing masks.
Right.
And then brass, it was only brass in this big room, and there had gobos in between them, and they were blowing away from each other. Same with the woodwind. So, yeah, we did all that sort of piecemeal separately. And then when it came to the choir, choirs are super spreaders, so you can't put them in the same room.
Right.
And if there's one person sick, everyone's getting sick. So we didn't want that. So my good friend Ayana Haviv, who's in LA, she's a choir maestro. She puts all the singers together, but she and I started talking really at the beginning of the pandemic, and I said, I'm not sure if I'm working with choir yet because I haven't written anything yet. But if I do, I'd like to kind of strategize how to do that now, because it may take some preparation. And so we decided, we can record. She said, I can find singers that all have their own home setup, and we'll record them one at a time. And I was like, I wonder how that's going to sound. And, I got a couple of engineers involved, and they wrote up like, okay, here's how you should record yourself, how far the mic should be from you. And, you do 2 passes, one sort of directly in the mic, and then turn the mic and do it sort of off axis just to give it a little tonal color. And then, how far you should be from the mic. And we did a few tests, and then it became, there was at some point during this project, the Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, it wasn't called that, right? Most of the beginning of when I was writing, we didn't know what it was called yet,
Right.
Code name was Zeus, like it's called Zeus, but we don't know what it is yet. It's Call of Duty Black Ops 5, but is it going to be called 5 or something else? So we didn't know. And then when they decided on Cold War, which is maybe April, I want to say,
Right.
April and May of 2020, then it was like, I have to do a Russian choir now.
Right.
I have to do that. So then I got this, this woman, Nino Sanakidze, who's Russian, who works for the LA Opera. Got her involved to do translation. So I would write the lyrics in English, and then
Nice.
she would translate them. And then of course, it's Cyrillic, so nobody can read that who's English. I don't know anybody can read that.
Right.
So she did transliteration, so the English singers could read it and know how to pronounce these things. So we did that, and then we had to do guide tracks, and then Nino had to approve the guide tracks. Yes, can you change that pronunciation just a little bit? And she would tweak all these things. And once we got through all that, we had 4 different things. When we did the full SATB, we had 4 guide tracks, one for S, one for soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and then we would send those individual tracks to the section people. We had 32 singers. They would each do 2 passes, like I said before, one on axis, one off axis, and then we had once they were done, it just came out flawlessly. It was perfect because they would just sing the same thing they heard without listening to a bunch of people, because then you're sort of getting into a game of telephone and people start to mispronounce things and it becomes muddy. So we would just have, one guide track per part, and then the rest of the people in that section would sing the same part with them.
That's
and
cool,
so that worked out great. Yeah. And it came back and everything sounded amazing. And there's such great singers in LA. It's like the same in the UK as well, but like in LA where I live, it's just a joy to work with these people. They're so good.
Definitely.
And then we had a music editor take all these, clean them up, line them up, and get them ready for the mix. And then ironically, like it took a lot of time to do that, but then mixing was just so easy because you had full control, right?
Right. But so the actual final result is not a real, so to speak, choir, but it's actually all individual performances put together as a choir. Is that what we hear in the soundtrack?
That's what you're hearing in the
That's
soundtrack.
cool.
Yeah.
And which track is that on the
I would
soundtrack?
beg to differ. That is a real choir, my friend.
Right. But yeah, of course. But it's not recorded in a traditional way, I guess.
No.
Right.
No, usually they're all in the same room, and you're doing, you just you tweak sections in real time. Like, oh, can the soprano sing louder, softer?
Right.
You do that, and everything's recorded at the same time. Yeah.
That's cool, man. I mean, it's cool that you can do it that way, like you just did. That you can adapt. Doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. That's really nice.
Well, I learned so much from doing it that way because, when we had 2 recording sessions. One was in June, and then there was one in August. And for the August one, I think I hadn't written. You know what? I think by the time we recorded in June, I still didn't know that it was called Cold War yet. I was misremembering that before. So right after we recorded in June, I found out, yes, this is the logo and this is the name of the game, and it's like, oh, it's called Cold War. And I already knew that we were in the Cold War. We just didn't know what the name of the game was. So, once I learned that it was for sure going to be called Cold War, then I switched my whole perception. I had to write the main theme that happens in the menu. And so I thought, oh, now that it's Cold War, I know what I want to do. I want to have a Russian male choir only, and I want the lyrics to be about the Cold War, right? So,
Awesome.
Now that we're getting really specific with the lyrics, then I hired my lyricist, Cindy Shapiro, to write them in English. And she would do all the research and make sure that the lyrics made sense to Russians as well as English-speaking people. So, but I really wanted, my vision was that I just really wanted Russians to appreciate what the lyrics were.
Yeah,
that was kind of important to me because I grew up in that period, and I remember what the American perception of the Cold War was with Reagan and his whole thing and being strong and all that. But I wanted to sort of convey the Russian perspective in these lyrics. So Cindy did a great job with that and did all the research, and she was looking at declassified CIA documents from the era. It was really cool.
That's
really
nice,
cool.
man.
Do that.
That's awesome
and then
that you went to that level of, authenticity, I guess.
Yeah. That's a fun part of what I do, is making sure that happens. So,
but what's it like being a composer in a game like Call of Duty? Because it's such a massive undertaking, I guess. So, yeah, what's it like for you in your position?
Well, I would say this is my 4th Call of Duty. So, what I enjoy about writing for Call of Duty is the games are massive, right? So, could be anywhere from 15 to 40 hours of gameplay. It just depends on the game. 2.5 hours of music. We have time. I typically have about 8 months to write all that. Right. So, that's a fair amount of time. I never felt pressured. I always had enough time, I felt, because I really wasn't working on anything else during that time. That's not true. I worked on a bunch of other things, but they were much smaller. So I never felt overwhelmed or any of that, so it was a joy, really. It's really fun. Nice. Fun to write it every day, going in okay, I'm going to work on this piece of music today. And I came from TV where the writing schedule is insane. You got to write 35 minutes in a week, and we were doing 2.5 hours in 8 months. So do the math. That's good. Yeah. Pretty easy to do.
But how do you structure your time anyway? Say you have 8 months. How do you start out the project so you you have the tone of the music, so it fits the tone of the game, right? Yeah, how do you figure all the beginning stuff out until you're on a roll?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I generally speaking, I kind of I take a lot of time to get all the scripts and artwork and story, and I sort of dive into what is happening, and I sort of map out like the entire game. You know, what are the levels? What's the purpose of each level? What's the overall story that we're trying to tell? And then I'll probably start writing themes, you know, first, like without even looking at anything. After I've looked at everything, I won't be sitting there looking at a movie or anything. I'll be, you know, just simply sketching out themes that I think work for what this game is and give it a bit of a signature, you know, like give it some place to live, you know, like when you hear this music, you think of what this game is, kind of thing. So that I spend quite a bit of time doing that. And when I say quite a bit of time, I'm talking like at least a month, like working every day, just thinking and sketching. And then once I have that stuff and people are digging the themes, then the rest of it is more about like, okay, we're starting this level. I have to write for this level. So they'll do like a video capture of a playthrough of the level, going through the golden path and maybe some side quests and stuff like that. So I have a video, like a movie of somebody playing the level kind of at a somewhat leisurely pace. So it's not rushed. And then I can go through the level with the audio director and decide where we're going to put music and what kind of palette we're going to use. And usually on that first level is where we really start talking about like, okay, what's the structure of the score? What's the, you know, if we had to describe the score, how would we do that before we even start? So for Cold War, for example, it was like, we're going to go back to like 80s synth, modernize it, mix it with orchestra and choir. And so it's sort of like a modernized 80s synth kind of score. But, you know, one thing we didn't want to do, because, it's sort of like when you say 80s synth score, you immediately think of like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to sound like that because, you know, that's great, but it's really, you know, it just sounds like we're ripping off Stranger Things.
Exactly.
So we didn't want to do that. So we wanted to make it more modern sounding, which we did, and I think we were successful at that.
Yeah, definitely. But it seems like you also have the freedom to hire people as needed. So if I understand it correctly, they give you, do you have like a set budget, or it's just like, hey, I need this person to do that, whatever it costs ish?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that. I mean, the way I've been working for 20 plus years is like, I have a group of people on my team that do budgeting and score supervision and all this stuff. So I do a budget for Call of Duty. I do a budget first based on, you know, after I go through that month or whatever, right? I'm trying to figure out what the palette is and what we're going to need. And then I'll do a budget based on everything that I've come up with for what we're going to need for the score. Orchestra, choir, any soloists I'm going to want, any singer soloists if I need them. Because those are all, anything with a voice on it is a pretty serious consideration because it's a SAG union thing and SAG-AFTRA union, and we have to make sure that's taken care of. And so I'll do the pretty intense budget period and come up with what we're going to put in the orchestra, you know, with the instrumentation of the orchestra, what are we going to need, and what are the soloists I'm going to need. Once that budget's done and approved and we have that to go with, then, you know, basically what I do is the group that I work with, they just wire transfer. Activision will just wire transfer the entire budget to us. We then spend what we need, and if there's anything left over, we send it back to them.
Oh, I see.
That's the way we do it. Because it's important for my clients to trust me. Like I don't want to just take all the money that's left, because some people do that, and that's actually kind of the norm in a way. Like people just get a budget, and I don't want to be incentivized not to spend the money. So I send everything back I'm not using.
Right.
And my creative fee is completely separate from that and isn't affected by that. So, but I don't feel it's right for me to take extra money at the end, because then I'm incentivized not to spend that money. Right. And I don't ever want to do that. I want to just have it completely separate. And it's like, this is my sandbox. If I need it, I'm going to use it. If it's going to improve the score, I'm going to use it. But if it's not, if I don't need it, send it back to them. So that's how I work. Generally.
Makes sense.
If they let me do that, and they're really happy that I do that, because I can't really tell you why, but they're going to spend the excess money on something really cool. So, but I can't say what it is yet.
Okay. Is it something we will see, or?
Unfortunately, no. It's a gift to the developers, but
okay.
It's really cool that they did that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, man. But so, I mean, it sounds like you almost have to foresee what can happen to you, right? Because you said you only found out that it was called Black Ops in June, whatever it was. And I mean, that was not taken into consideration when you set the budget, right? So is it just, can you just go back and say, hey, actually, I want to do this now. Is there a budget for it? Or how does that whole thing work?
Yeah, I've never ever gone back to them for more money, ever.
Right.
And the reason is because I'm a really good budgeter.
Right.
And because because I have a track record of sending them back what I don't use, I tend to I make sure I have plenty. Right. No matter what happens, I have enough. So, because I don't want to do that ever. It's a pain in the ass for them, for me. Like, if I have to go back and say, hey, we're going to need more money to do that. Like, if they come to me at the very end and say, okay, we need all this extra stuff, they'll just say, we'll come up with more money for you.
Right.
But never in my career have I ever gone back and said, we need more money. I mean, I did that one time early in my career, but I learned from that never to do that again. So
makes sense. Something that's really interesting, obviously game like consoles like the PS5 just came out. There's been a lot of advancements in graphics and whatnot, performance. How has that affected your work as a composer, if at all?
It really hasn't at all. Like I produce at the same quality I always did. I mean, I think going forward we're going to be able to do more of even the game music in like 5.1 surround. We didn't do that for this game, even though it was like a first generation of the next generation game, but it was a launch title for PS5 and the Xbox. But we're not gonna. We did only like the pre-rendered cinematics in 5.1, so I would, we would mix stuff in 5.1 for that. But
no one asking you to do 3D.
I'm set up for any of that, so I can do any of those things. So I just do what they ask me to do.
But no one's asking you for 3D like binaural mixes or anything like that for music.
No, because all that kind of 3D stuff is done in the engine. So they would take my stuff and then just do whatever processes on top of that.
Right.
There's really the new consoles have just enormous amount of like audio features that never existed before. I mean, the stuff that they're doing in this game is pretty amazing. Like when you're playing this game, you can actually hear if somebody is above you, next to you. You know what I mean? Because it's got that 3D kind of vibe going on. It's pretty incredible. I've heard lots of stuff, and you can hear it in just stereo headphones, just like that. It's like when somebody's above you, behind you, next to you, and you can hear when people are far away from you too. Like if you hear gunfire, and it's far away, it sounds far away. It's so hyper realistic now. It's like they've done some amazing things with audio, but music is really not handled that way ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So music is just there to heighten or enhance the experience. Is not ever like directional unless it's coming out of like a box somewhere, like what they call diegetic music. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been listening to a few like binaural mixes or recordings of music, and there's no real point of listening because usually, I mean, the bass would never be above or behind it because that would just, mess you up.
Yeah.
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 But
unless
it's
you're
still
doing a
very cool.
live recording of a band playing, it's not really that useful. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, anyway, with the 3D audio and binaural audio, whatever you want to call it, for the new consoles, I haven't played a PlayStation 5, so I haven't experienced it.
I haven't either. I've only seen the renders, like videos. Like, oh, here's an example of what we're doing in the game. Oh, that sounds cool, but I haven't actually heard it in the game yet. So
Yeah, it's cool,
yeah,
man. Yeah.
mostly because I don't have a PS5 yet.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ordered one, or that's not on your list?
Well, I haven't because I'm just traveling right now and taking some time off. So I'll deal with that when I get back.
Yeah, definitely, man.
January.
But something, when you're in the writing process of any game, and if you're stuck, like it's like I don't know what the hell should come after this next, let's call it verse, whatever. I guess you don't call it verse in your world, but as an example,
Yeah.
how do you get out of a problem like that?
I know this is going to sound like some sort of like I'm bragging, but I never have that problem. And I don't have that problem because, first of all, I do my homework, so I know kind of what, I thrive on creative constraint. So I create, and that's that first month where I'm reading everything and I'm trying to get in the head of the characters. I'm trying to like understand what the overall story is, and I'm trying to get, sort of a picture in my mind of what is happening so that when I'm writing the music, it just flows. So all that homework that I do, and I love to do that process, really helps me in that way, I think. And the other thing too is that, I'm writing to picture, and it's so inspiring to look at the picture. The worst that happens is that, it's just another battle, right? I have to write more battle music.
Right.
So I don't particularly love that feeling, but I can typically get past that by writing something that is less battle-y and more moody, and that'll get me in the mood, and then that'll launch me into the combat pretty seamlessly. So, those are kind of tricks I use to get myself to, what's coming before it and what's coming after it are just as important as what's happening in that moment when you're really intense,
Right.
But I love telling stories. So with music, so, if I can get to the point where I'm telling a story, then I'm good, man. I'm just telling the story. It just comes to me. I don't know any other way to put it. It just happens, The picture is telling me what to write, kind of thing.
But so do you also get the picture even before, or okay, how should I phrase this question? So you don't start writing music until you see a picture, or you still sketch stuff out before?
Well, like I said before, like when I'm doing themes and stuff, I'm not writing the picture. I'm
Right.
that's all in my head. Like, this is what this theme is going to be, whatever. But when I'm writing the game score, I'm writing to picture. Like,
Right.
when we put that music in the game, it's in the same places that I was looking at in the videos.
Right.
So I work very, very closely with the music implementation specialist, I guess we'll call him, Colin Ayers. He works at Treyarch, and he and I work very closely together. We have Google Sheets and whatever, and I'll explain, this piece is supposed to loop, and it's supposed to go on this thing, and it's supposed to loop until this happens. And then, I write out all the instructions based on my intention for how I wrote it. And I've played games for years, and I've implemented scores myself. I've been him before with my own scores. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about how it should work and how it will work in the game in the end, how I envision it working. And we write lots of transitional material because I almost want the music to just, it goes away at strategic points, but like to get from the point of a looping piece of music to nothing, no music, the cardinal sin would just be to stop the music, right? Because then it'll take you out of the experience. So the transition is meant to be a cinematic transition, right? Like when you see, you know, in a film, you'll see it cut to an establishing shot and then the music tails out under dialogue for the next scene. We do the same thing in games. It's like, you know, you finish the last shot is fired, trigger the transitional piece. It takes it down to almost nothing. And then maybe it goes to like, you know, whatever vibe is happening between the guys who are talking. Okay, what do we do now, guys? You know, whatever. And then, you know, the music is enhancing that too. And then when it goes away, you want to implement it so that you almost can't tell it went away.
Right.
So music never calls attention to itself other than doing its job underneath what's happening on the screen.
Right.
So it's a very cinematic way of writing. And I don't think a lot of people do, like not everyone does that in games, right? I write like I'm scoring a film. So I have a lot of little pieces of music that go, you know, dovetail, you know, depending on what's happening where, you know, because it's interactive, right? And then, you know, and the transitions are always working. They're tempo matched and beat matching, all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, if it's done right, like the score is just doing a great job. You know, it's just telling the story and right there, what's going on.
Because, I mean, games are so massive these days, and there's a lot of open world games. And I guess this is the case in Call of Duty as well, where maybe this is a stupid question, I know, but depending, because the player can make so many different choices, I guess, is that something you have to take into consideration that, like you're talking about looping, like a music that has to be able to loop? Is that where a piece of looping music would be, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Well, just understand that, you know, Call of Duty is not an open world game. It's a very experience, right? You know, this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then you finish the level and then you go to the next level. And the only difference is you might have a choice of what level to go to other than that. But even the fact that the level itself is a linear experience, even though it's interactive, even though you might spend more time in this battle than most people do, you're still going to have to get through that battle and then go to the next thing, right? So it's in that way, it's pretty linear. So open world is like, you know, it's like, you know, Warzone or, you know, what was the name of the battle royale in Black Ops 4? I can't remember it right now. I think it was called it was called, what was it called?
I'm not sure, actually.
Brain fart. Anyway,
that's all right.
That, like, we didn't write any music for that because there's just no way to make music work in a situation like that where it's completely open world. And it just ends up getting in the way. You know, we did some trials with all of that and it just doesn't work, you know. The only thing that works is getting you into the level. Once you're in the level, you know, they might put they'll take my stems and they'll strategically put them in here and there, but it's more underscore than anything else. And I'm not writing directly for those moments. So, it's like we don't write very much music for multiplayer either, but we do write music for it. Like we do these things called multiplayer sets, where it's sort of like, you know, when you're getting your character ready, there's a looping piece. It's kind of, you know, making you feel cool and, oh, this is going to be really fun. And then you'll do what they call the spawn piece, or as you get in the level and the game starts, the match starts.
That makes sense, actually.
And then maybe halfway. Yeah, and then when you get halfway through, there's about a minute and a half underscore piece plays just to give it some variety, and then it just goes away. And then the timer, you get 30 seconds till the end of or a minute till the end of the match. Then we have like a thing that it's always like a ticking clock, you know, kind of sound. And then win, lose, or draw, and then that's all the music in the level. And I think that works really well for the Treyarch games, like other games like. You know, the other games in Call of Duty that, you know, in their multiplayer, there's absolutely no music. Like, to me, that's missing something. You know, it really is. And I think that the Black Ops multiplayer, those music sets really add quite a bit to that experience. Very cool.
Yeah, definitely, man. But it makes total sense when you explain it how it works, that the music is not actually in those moments. I guess I never just thought about it, that
Yeah,
there's no music.
because you're really just you're trying to listen to your friends.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you need that music there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when it comes in, it's like, oh, okay, that means something has shifted, and we're like halfway through. Okay, cool. So and it's just really low key, just cool music, kind of badass. It's like makes you feel good. And
Definitely.
then and then when the timer's coming up, there's a purpose to that too, because it's like, oh, we're almost done. Hurry up, kill these people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's cool, man.
no, you got to kill people faster. That's important.
Yeah. Very important. But how does, because a lot of, if I'm not wrong here, but a lot of composing, like if I check out the soundtrack, there's a lot of short, like themes, I guess you call it, or pieces.
Yeah.
So as a composer, you don't, or do you think in terms, you don't think in terms of traditional songwriting, I guess, but it's still songwriting,
Well,
right?
a lot of people do. A lot of people
Okay.
do. I like I said, I write little bits of music that are meant to sort of one follows the other. So what I try to do for the soundtrack is edit more pieces together, so it sounds like a longer piece.
Right.
So it is a longer piece, but I realize that a lot of the pieces, there's 51 pieces of music on the soundtrack. And the reason there's so many is because I wrote so many different pieces of music to make the game work.
Right.
And I was just trying to like cut things together to make it at least a minute plus for the soundtrack. And many of them are 3 minutes, many of them are 2 minutes. But there's a lot of short pieces in the soundtrack. The longer pieces were the themes. They're like 3 or 4 minutes long. So
yeah. But does that mean you don't have to worry? Does that mean you don't have to worry about, oh, it's only 50, let's say a minute. You don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have a second chorus because the theme is a theme, I guess. You don't have to maybe, does it make sense what I mean? Ish.
Well, I do worry about that, especially for the soundtrack. And I spent a lot of time editing things together to make the soundtrack listenable.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just, here's a 50-second piece and here's another minute piece. And then so, yeah, I mean, I try, most of the pieces I write are at least a minute long. So, that's not really too big an issue, but I like, for a soundtrack, I like to put at least a couple of those together just so, it's not this short piece, then this short piece, then this short piece.
Makes sense. Makes sense, man. Thanks for explaining that. But how, because I know you didn't study composing or anything like that, but you still are very, very good at it. Not like, I don't say you have to study to be good, but how was your transition into becoming a composer? Because didn't you work in studios a bit too in the early days?
Yeah, I did. I was a recording engineer for about 8 years before I started composing.
And how was that transition into that?
Yeah. I just have a weird life. I mean, I went to school for civil engineering. That's where I went to college for. I have a degree in civil engineering.
Right.
So I was designing bridges and roads and site plans and stuff like that before I.
That's pretty cool.
Became a music person. So, and then I just got I just felt a little bit detached from that career. Like, I enjoyed going to school for it, and then when I got into the real world and started doing it, it sort of felt like it was less interesting to me. That sometimes can happen, I suppose if I was designing like, Disney Hall in Hollywood or some amazing buildings, and working with architects and stuff, that would be one thing. But it just wasn't that. It didn't feel creative enough, in the real world. So whereas I love math, I love science, I enjoyed going to school for it and learning all that stuff. So like a year after I was graduated and working in civil engineering, I just decided, I know I went to school for this, but I think I'm done, and that was a weird choice to make. Like, even my boss at the time, like, I was working for a company that was a civil engineering company. He was like, "You're leaving?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to try something else." And he's like, wow, okay, well, you're always welcome to come back. I think you will because you went to school for it. And I remember him saying that, and I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life either. I didn't know I was going to become a musician or composer or any of that. I just left and I became a bartender to make money. I just wanted to like take stock of everything and figure out what I wanted to do next. And then I did have a band at the time, and I was playing gigs, and I was a guitar player in the band and writing some songs and whatever. And I thought, okay, I'll just keep doing that, and I'll bartend to make money. And then we went into a recording studio to record a 4-song demo. When we're there all weekend doing that, and I completely fell in love with that process. So, the next 10 years was me learning how to do that and doing it and becoming a producer and engineer. And then I worked with a guy named John Cale, who was a composer, musician. He's Welsh. You probably know who he is, right? Yeah, John Cale, Velvet Underground.
Right.
John was a complete maniac in the studio. He worked at like lightning speed, and to the point where it's like, you do this, I'll do this, blah blah blah, and like in 10 minutes later you have a record. It was like, it was unbelievable. Like, I could tell you stories about him, but he taught me that I could, if I just put my mind to it, I could be a composer. Because I'm watching him compose for 4 years or whatever I worked with him, and his composing process was so like right side of the brain, kind of like, I'm just going to sit down at the piano and play something, and that's going to be good enough.
Okay, that's cool.
Like, it's sort of like, fuck everyone else. What I'm playing is gold, so fuck you. It was kind of like that attitude, and I was blown away by that. So, but I was so inspired by that, by watching him compose,
Definitely.
And that sort of led me to, because at the time I was also, when I was working with him, I was also producing bands, and I was watching John produce bands, and we were in studios all over the country, all over the United States and everywhere, just producing, and we did everything. I mean, with him, it was sort of like a smorgasbord of creative music stuff. Like, he was never hemmed in by like, okay, all I do is compose. He would compose, one day be composing a ballet for the Rotterdam Ballet Company. The next day we were doing a film score at the Hit Factory in New York, I was recording a full orchestra. The next day we were in Chicago, doing a band, like producing a band. So it was just this really fun, exciting career I was having as an engineer, but I was also doing arrangements for him. I had no business doing that. Like, I didn't go to school for that. I just learned how to do it on the fly, or I would get somebody to help me figure it out.
That's exciting, man.
And so through that experience, I just became like, oh my God, I can do anything, And so, met Cindy Shapiro in the studio. She was a singer. She had a band called 2.5D. She had a deal with Capitol Records. I was doing demos. I was recording the demos with them and mixing them. And she was interesting because she was a software engineer doing game design during the day, and then at night she had her band. So it was just a really cool time in New York City. And then so we got together and got married. And we've had a really interesting creative life together. And she's also a composer. She does theater. And so, that sort of got me into games, because Cindy sort of introduced me to the game world. And then we got a chance to write music for a game. And then the rest is history. I started doing a bunch of games, and then I got into TV and film and stuff like that too. But yeah, so, I just sort of taught myself, or more accurately, what I did was I found people who could teach me how to do certain things like orchestration and harmony and counterpoint. And I would study with them.
Right.
There's all kinds of ways to learn how to do stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do it like everyone else does it. And I just sort of followed the path that made most sense to me.
That's super interesting. I mean, also the thing. I mean, you're basically talking about having a lot of good mentors, I guess. Like you seeked out
Well,
the
yeah, I mean,
people.
but you know, just telling you the story, I think the most important part of the story is me saying I don't want to be a civil engineer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important part of the story. Like, you got to figure out what floats your boat, what makes you excited, what, you know, ignites your passion. And, you know, and I didn't have that. Like, even when I said no to civil engineering, I just trusted something else would come up. I was young, maybe stupid, but in retrospect, I wasn't stupid. I was really smart. That was the smartest thing I could have done, was quit what I was doing that I wasn't excited about, so that making room for something else to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That is so freaking important. You gotta, like, if you're not happy, then don't stop doing the thing that makes you unhappy. You know, first of all, put yourself in a position to allow other things that you are excited about to come into the picture. Yeah.
That is very inspiring.
That is Jack Wall's note of wisdom for the day. There you go. No charge.
Thank you. No, but it's super fascinating, and you haven't talked to other people on the podcast. It hasn't been the exact same story as you, but it's almost like there's always been this belief, I guess, that something will happen. You know.
Yeah.
But I think I don't think I would have the courage to do exactly that, but I still have done in a similar vein. But yeah, it's because when you do it, for me at least, I know it can be really scary. But were you ever scared, or you were just like, I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm just gonna.
Oh yeah, I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing. You know, as I've gotten older and wiser, hopefully, one of the pictures I have in my brain that I've sort of cultivated over the years, which helps me. And I tell this to other people, to young people who are starting. I tell them this too. Like, there's a train with this opportunity on it. You can't see this train, but it is going 100 miles an hour, barreling its way towards you right now. Right? You can't see it, but it's already on its way, and it's going to get to you. So just wait for it. Okay? Like, today, it feels like I got nothing going on. Well, it's fine. Enjoy the day. The sun's out. You know, there's water in the distance. It's like, you know, enjoy the view. While you wait, have a drink, have a pint, because by the time you're finished the pint, the train will be here, and it's going to run you over with this opportunity, and just be ready for that opportunity. It's happening. It's going to happen. It's already in process. Yeah. It's not like this. I make it out so it's not this weird hypothetical, maybe it'll happen. It's already happening. Right now, it's happening. It's on its way to you. And you know, when I think about things like that, you know, it calms me down. It's like, oh, you know, shit's meant to happen. You know, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So and you really should make way for that. And that helps me say no to certain things I don't want to do, because I know something else is already coming my way. Right? If you knew, like, somebody called you and said, yeah, I'm on, you know, the Niclas Express. I'll be there in like whenever I'll be there, but I'll be there soon, soon. You would feel fine about saying no to something you didn't want to do, wouldn't you? Right?
Exactly.
So, you know, and I get the whole money thing. It's like, oh, but I have to make a living. Fine. Do something like you're at the doctor reading a magazine, you know, just to make a little bit of money so you can survive and feed yourself. Because something's coming for you. As long as you're open to it and you're willing to do the work and be prepared when it gets here. Like, you should always be preparing for when the train gets here with that opportunity on it. So, you know, don't sit around. If you want to be a composer, don't sit around waiting to be a composer. Compose something. Sit down and compose something. Put it out into the world. Put it on SoundCloud. Show it to your friends, whatever. Because there's opportunity coming, but if you're not ready for the opportunity, that train's going to just go right by you. So that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, and I
All
love
those
that you're saying that too, because
spiritual analogies.
yeah, I mean, I love that you're saying, you know, that you have to be prepared because, like you said, you cannot just sit around. You have to still, yeah. I'm just saying what you said, but yeah, it's I like that you said it, that you have to be working hard, uh, and not just let the train pass you, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, well said, man. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. But I mean, does that also work for you as a sort of a I don't know if you're into meditation at all, but it seems like that the fact that you have that mentality has worked as some sort of a meditative practice. Is that wrong or?
Yeah, meditation's tough for me. I do it on occasion, but sometimes I don't. Like the only meditation that works is guided meditation, but it tends to put me to sleep. So I like to do it occasionally, but not every single day. Like I'll do it occasionally, but meditation is like, there's different ways to meditate, right? There's, like for me, taking a shower is meditation. I can't tell you how many ideas I've come up with in the shower. There's something about the running water, the sound of it. I'm very, like, there's certain neurons in my brain start firing when I listen to like a waterfall or the ocean or like literally brown noise. I put it on my phone when I sleep because it helps me to sleep. So there's something about like masking the outside world that allows those neurons to fire, and then I can sort of that's my meditation, right? Because it quiets everything else so that I can just be still and hear what I need to do next, or hear what the idea, like it, you know, there are like I don't really ever have the blank page. I'm stuck in writer's block, but there are moments where, okay, I got to write something, but in order to write this piece, I'm going to go take a shower, because taking a shower has that thing, and I can start to hear things because the sound of the water, I think, is what blocks everything else out, so I can hear what it's supposed to be. Or I'll go for a walk and I'll just get my head out of, oh, I have to write now, and then everything starts coming, and then I'll use my voice memo to oh, I got it, and then I'm excited. I get back to the studio and I start putting it in, sequencing it, and messing around. So
yeah, I mean that what's it called, the voice memo app? I think it's been used by so many music makers all over the world.
So favorite tool, my favorite tool by far.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because I sometimes I play FIFA, you know, the football game.
Oh, okay.
And usually I have my guitar on me whilst playing. So every time there's like whatever happens in the game, right? There might be a 10-second break. I just try to come up with something during that 10-second break. I usually actually it gives me a lot of ideas playing and trying to come up with something in such a short amount of space. It's been sometimes it works surprisingly well.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, Jack, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Maybe before we wrap up, last question. Do you have a favorite failure that, you know, propelled you forward, so to speak, that actually was success in the end, so to speak?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, yeah, I mean, failures are important because sort of like night and day, cold and hot. It's like, you know, one doesn't exist without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Success doesn't exist without failure, kind of thing. And I think we learn as much or more from failure than we do success. Success is wonderful, but like, you know, there's a few things. Like, there's little failures that I've learned to live with in a great way. Like in the beginning of my career, probably when there was less composers, I was winning all types of awards. And now I just don't win awards that often because there's so many people doing what we do. So, but through that process of not winning those awards, I realized that the motivation isn't awards for me anyway. It's not the recognition from necessarily my peers. It's always nice, but it's like the journey of creating something is just so great. It's like I really feel alive when I'm doing that. And obviously it's nice when that can be recognized, but that's not why I do it, you know? So that's cool. And then, you know, there's other failures that are pretty profound, like not being invited back to do it, to do the next game in a series or something like that. Those things are tough, and stay with you. But through that process, you also just understand, like, oh, what did I do wrong? You know, and so you start to self-analyze and realize, oh, well, I see what I did. I could have done a better job with that, with my client, you know. I could have taken care of my client better. So, you know, you always gain things from your failures, I find, you know, that are pretty significant and important. So, yeah, I've learned a lot from failing.
What does it mean to take care of your clients? Oh, say it again?
I don't fail as much anymore, I find, because I've learned important things from those failures, you know. So less failure these days, I think.
Yeah. But what does it mean to take care of your clients better? You just mentioned it in passing there, but I guess it's maybe not so much on the music side, but it's more on the business side, I guess. Is that correct?
Well, it's both, because, right, you know, it's sort of like, you know, if you didn't pay enough attention to your client, you may not understand that you're not delivering what they're asking you to deliver, right? So, you know, you might just be going down the path of like, oh, this is what I want to deliver, but you missed something that they asked for that you didn't get, and maybe they're too busy to like hold your hand to get that back. And so it's just really important to, like, if you don't understand what their vision is, because when you're writing for media, it's not like you're an independent composer writing your great symphony. It's not like that. You're a collaborator. You're not, you know, you're there to achieve someone else's vision, right? And you just got to make sure you're doing that. And, you know, there's been times in the past where I just didn't do that enough, I guess. And so I definitely make sure the client is getting what they need.
Right. And are there any particular
questions? The context
questions?
of being creative.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. Are there any particular questions you always ask in a new client of yours?
Well, okay. Well, the first really important question is you have to find out who the real decision makers are. Because if you're not dealing with those people directly, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Because it's that game of telephone again. You'll say something to maybe the audio director, but if the director of the game is really the person who is making the decisions about what music is good and what isn't, you need to have direct conversations with that person, at least part of the time. You know, you need to check in with them on a regular basis and have like a standing meeting with them.
Right.
Where they have a chance to voice their concerns, their notes, their changes they want, that kind of thing. That's a really important thing, to just keep in touch with that person. Yeah, and you know, and then if you get into a situation too where, you know, there's a committee of people who are making the decisions, and that can be tough because that committee could be comprised of individuals who have completely different ideas of what the music should be. And that's a really tough situation to be in. I had that happen to me once. I had to leave the project because I just couldn't make everyone happy. I couldn't.
Wow.
You know, it was a tough situation for me. I'd written an hour of music and it was not making it. So, and it wasn't that it wasn't any good. It was just simply that I wasn't getting where I needed to be, you know, with everyone. So you just have to really be aware of situations like that. The politics of what's happening at the studio can be stuff you have to deal with. You know, I'm really fortunate to work with Treyarch because I work with the audio director. He is in charge of all the music, and he loves what I do, and if he's got notes for me, I take care of it. And, it's really easy. It's just him, and I, and that's it. We're good. Once he says yes, it's done. I never have to worry about it again. I move on to the next one. So that's been a great relationship for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thanks for sharing those tips. Really helpful. But Jack, pleasure.
Yeah.
And is there anything else coming up from you in the future? Any other game coming out soon that you're working
No,
on?
I'm just kind of like, during the time of COVID, I finished Cold War in November and then or October rather, and then we took off for a trip because I think projects are going to start really ramping up once the vaccine gets going, and people feel safe to go back into production again. So I'm just taking this opportunity to take a little time off, reset, do that meditation, figure out what's next for me, because I really could use that at the moment. So I think we all can, right?
Yeah, totally.
What's happening?
Exactly. But yeah, thank you again, Jack. Real pleasure having you on.
Pleasure, Niclas. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jack, for coming on to the show. Real pleasure having you on, and hope you, the listener and watcher, enjoyed this interview as well. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the interview, and if you have any questions, all that sort of good stuff. Also, check out Jack's music. Obviously, he has a Spotify account, whatever you call it, Spotify profile. I'll leave a link to that in the description below as well. And also, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, either if that's, man, talking rambly. Let's do that again. So feel free to subscribe to the channel, either if that's here on YouTube or Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you are consuming this podcast. The channel, again, is growing very slowly but steadily, and that's all thanks to you. I really appreciate your support. But that's it for this week. Pleasure to have you on, and pleasure to have Jack on. I hope you like this interview, and I'll see you next week. So take care.